20 messages. Saturday began with a phone call from Shantae at 7 o'clock in the morning. Not another dream, I complained. So far, she had called to tell me about dreams with sports cars, hot air balloons, and talking lockers. I was a character in each, but honestly, the only thing remotely connected to my real life was my school locker, and it had never uttered a word. Why couldn't Shantae dream about me with a guy from my boyfriend wish list, or about me getting a good grade in math, or about my mom feeling better? In this one, she began, you're roller skating on a beach. You mean on a sidewalk or a pier? No, on the sand. I wanted to pull out my hair. Are you serious? Have you tried roller skating on sand? It's next to impossible. But that's the point, Shantae insisted. In the dream, it wasn't impossible. Not only were you skating, but you were gliding. People were pointing at you and talking about how easy you made it seem. You should really buy a pair of skates. But we don't have a beach in San Antonio, I reminded her. I had another dream, too, I sighed. And what was this one about? You were with Ileana's brother. Really? Now this sounded like a dream I could relate to. What were we doing? Talking. That's it. I couldn't help being disappointed. I was hoping for a close encounter of the fourth kind. Yes, Shantae said, and their words were very clear. They said you can be two places at once if you ask your twin for help. What's that supposed to mean? My subconscious is showing me how to cover more ground when you look for sponsors. But I don't have a twin, I said, all frustrated. Shantae didn't seem to notice. Buy those skates, she commanded, and ask your parents if you have a secret twin somewhere. I sighed. So far, Shantae wasn't scoring well on this test of her psychic abilities. The only thing she truly accomplished was waking me up with her phone calls. I wish I did have skates, I admitted. I have to walk around the neighborhood again for my promesa. That's great, I'll go with you. At first this seemed like a good idea, but last week Ileana had joined me. I liked her company, but all she did was talk about boys. Shantae didn't discuss boys so much, but she loved to give me advice and share her strategies for becoming the first black woman mayor of San Antonio. Plus, she'd probably make up more dreams. Now this was something I had to do by myself. That's okay, I said. I better go alone. Are you sure? I have terrific persuasive skills. I'm on the debate team, remember? That means I know how to talk people into things. I know, you are great. But this is something I have to do on my own. Suit yourself, she said, and with that she hung up. After breakfast, I headed out, deciding to start on the other side of the neighborhood. The weather had cooled, so lots of people were out mowing grass and washing cars. Hello, sir, I called to a man edging his lawn. He didn't hear me. Hello, I shouted. He looked up and turned off the edger when he saw me. Can I help you with something? As I told him about needing sponsors, a woman came from the side of the house. She had gardening gloves on, and her clothes were full of dirt and leaves. What do we have here? She asked. This girl, the man explained, is asking for donations. He turned to me. Sorry, but we can't help today. Maybe another time. Now wait a minute, the woman said, pushing him aside. She took off her gloves, stuck them in her pocket, and held out her hand so I could shake it. My name's Anne. What's yours? Erica. Well, Erica, what are you raising money for? Breast cancer research. It's for a service learning project I'm doing at school, but mostly it's for my mom. She has cancer? I nodded. You poor thing, she said. Then she looked at her husband. Don't just stand there. Go inside and get some money. I wanted to laugh at the way she ordered him around, but I didn't want to ruin his chance at a sponsor. How old's your mom? The woman asked as we waited. 40. That's young, which means she's strong. I bet she's going to be just fine. I hope so, I said. Her husband returned and handed me $30. I gave him the clipboard, and he filled out the sponsor information. Can I get back to the yard? He asked his wife, the way kids ask parents for permission to play. She nodded, so he turned on the edger. As soon as he got back to work, Anne put on her gardening gloves and headed to the side of the house again. I tried to say goodbye, but I don't think they had heard me over the loud machine, so I moved on to the next house. I really wanted to get more sponsors, but almost everyone waved me away. A lot of them said not now or come another time. I knew they never wanted to see me again, but they were trying to get rid of me. But I wrote their addresses on a list called Come Back Later, vowing that I would return in a few days. After all, the 5K was 1 month away. So I kept walking. The day got hotter and hotter, my nose feeling sunburned, sweat trickling into my eyes, and blisters forming on my feet. Once in a while, someone donated, but at this rate, it would take a year to get 500 names. I didn't have a year. Mom didn't have a year. I glanced at my mood ring, amber again, a deeper shade, which meant I had moved from feeling unsettled to feeling despair. No wonder my shoulders drooped. I noticed that I was near Patty's house, so I decided to stop for a break. She wasn't the best cure for despair, but maybe she could help me take my mind off of problems for a while. When I knocked on her door, her grandfather answered. He had moved into her house after his parents died 2 years ago. Patty was real close to his grandparents, so when her grandmother died, she felt awful. We Robins bought signed a card for her, and when we got together and baked cookies. We must have given Patty 4 dozen. Normally, she loved cookies, so we thought they'd cheer her up. But when she bit into the first one, she didn't smile. She didn't frown either. She had no expression at all. And when I watched her eat that cookie, I imagined it was as bland as pasta with no sauce or spices. We wanted to help Patty, but when you said nothing, not even cookies can make you feel better. Is that how I would feel if Mom died? I hated to think about it, but I had to be prepared. What if radiation therapy didn't work? What if Mom got sicker and sicker till she couldn't take it anymore? Would I ever get over the sadness? A few weeks after her grandmother died, Patty returned to her old self, but I don't think that I could ever get back to normal if something awful happened to Mom. My mood ring would probably stay black for months, maybe even years. Are you okay? Patty's grandpa asked. You look like you've seen a big hairy watermelon. I looked up at him. I have never seen a hairy watermelon before. Then I tried to imagine a watermelon with hair. What a ridiculous image. I couldn't help laughing, and it was such a relief to smile after spending the whole morning with a frown. Grandpa, I heard Patty's voice behind him. Quit teasing her. He moved aside, and Patty waved me in. I'm so glad you're here, she said, leading me to the kitchen, where a bunch of papers had taken over the table. Can you believe my English teacher called and told my parents I hadn't done a single thing this week? You haven't, I said, remembering how Patty had complained about her homework. Sure, but did she have to call? It's her job. So now I have a whole bunch of homework, Patty went on, and if I don't finish it, I'm grounded. I'm going to be in trouble, too. I could barely keep up. Who knew 8th grade was going to be so hard? She nodded. How long will you be grounded if you don't catch up? I asked, hoping she wouldn't be grounded during Derek's party. Forever, her grandpa said from the other room. Patty just rolled her eyes. In a quieter voice, she said, I have a serious case of writer's block. You have to help me. You never have writer's block. I don't? No, everybody knows you're the one to turn to when we can't think of ideas. Really? Yes, really. So will you help? Of course, I said, pointing at my t-shirt. I had 2 stick figures. One had a circle for a head, but no body. The other stick figure was complete. It held a straight line in one hand, and its speech bubble said, I've got your back. Patty studied it a minute, and then she laughed. Oh, I get it. This one guy's holding the line that would make up the other guy's back. I shrugged and nodded at the same time. Except for Gumwad, my friends always took a while before getting my t-shirt jokes. So what's your homework? I asked. I have to write similes, and I can't think of a single one. I thought a moment. How about as droopy as a thirsty sunflower, or as panicked as a cat-chased mouse? She wrote them down, and together we thought of a few others. Then she had to pick a popular story and write it from a different point of view. I don't know what that means, Patty complained. It means to forget the main character and pretend the story belongs to someone else. So instead of Cinderella, she said, pretend the story is about the fairy godmother. Sure, you could do that, but how about pretending the story is about the glass slipper? But that's an object, which means it doesn't have a brain. How could something without a brain tell a story? That's the fun part, I said. What's the slipper thinking as it dances around the ballroom, and as it gets left behind when Cinderella runs off, and as the stepsisters stick their fat, smelly feet in it? She thought about it. I guess I could write a story about that. She sounded doubtful, but an intense brainstorming session convinced her that she could write the story. Just then her grandfather walked in. All done? Almost, Patty said. At least I know what to do now, thanks to Erica. Sounds like you owe her one, her grandfather said. That's okay, I said. I had fun helping with the homework. I stood, ready to leave. And where are you going? Patty's grandfather asked. I need to walk around the neighborhood. I'm raising money for cancer research. I grabbed my clipboard. Would you like to donate? Patty's grandpa reached into his pocket and pulled out a 5. I guess I should, he said, since you helped my Patty with her homework. Thank you so much, I said, taking the money and handing him the form. As he filled it out, he said to Patty, "You should return the favor and go with Erica. You want me to knock on a bunch of weird people's doors? Can I pay her back by buying her lunch or something?" "I don't need help," I said. "I can do this on my own." Her grandfather thought a minute. "Make sure you knock on that red door 2 houses over." I already did. "So Mrs. Cavazos signed your form?" "No, she didn't even answer the door." Patty's grandpa put his hand on his hips. "Well, I'll be." Then he said, "Just a minute." He took out his cell phone and dialed a number. "Hello," I heard him say. "How are you doing, Mrs. Cavazos?" A woman spoke on the other end of the line, but I couldn't understand her. "And how's that pipe I fixed last month?" He listened a bit. "I'm so glad to hear it isn't giving you any more trouble, and that I was able to save you from hiring an expensive plumber." While he listened, he winked at me. "Actually, I do need a favor," he said to the phone. "I'm sending Patty over with a friend. She's raising money for a fundraising event, and she's been going around the neighborhood looking for sponsors. I told her how nice you are and that you'd really like to donate." I don't know what the woman said, but when Patty's grandpa got off the phone, he said, "Mrs. Cavazos is ready to help, so you two go right over before she changes her mind. And Patty, go to Johnny's too. Tell him he can borrow my lawnmower any time, and tell Sally that I'll feed her dog when she goes out of town next week." He paused, looking up at the ceiling. "Oh, yeah, tell Jamal he can donate the $10 he owes me. Got all that?" "Johnny, Sally, Jamal," Patty repeated, counting them off her fingers. "Got it." I didn't really want her help, didn't want her to see get doors slammed in my face. That was the last thing I wanted my friends to talk about. They had already gossiped about my troubles last week when I wasn't supposed to have any trouble, and I worried that my promesa counted only if I did it on my own. But Patty's grandpa was forcing her to help me. "Let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone," I suggested to Patty. "Grab a trash bag and we'll pick up garbage along the way." "What a sensible girl," her grandpa said. All impressed, Patty just rolled her eyes, but she grabbed the trash bag anyway. As we walked to the house with the red door, Patty said, "Before my grandpa moved in, I didn't know any of these people, but he went and made friends with everyone, which means they're always in our business. It's such a pain." The red door was open, so instead of knocking or ringing the bell, Patty called through the screen door. "Mrs. Cavazos, are you in there?" A middle-aged woman approached. She said, "Patty, it's so nice to see you." "Nice to see you too," Patty replied. "My grandpa's glad to hear the plumbing's okay. Those leaky pipes can sure mess up your floor." Patty paused a minute before remembering why we were really here. "This is my friend Erica." "Mucho gusto," Mrs. Cavazos said. "Mucho gusto," I replied. "Her mom has cancer," Patty said, "so she needs money for a cancer race next month. My grandpa said you'd help." I couldn't believe how blunt Patty was, but Mrs. Cavazos didn't seem to mind. She said, "La pobrecita, what kind of cancer does your mother have?" "Breast cancer," I said, and since she had a small statue of La Virgen de Guadalupe on her porch, I added, "I made a promesa at that shrine in the valley, so I have to get 500 names." Mrs. Cavazos nodded. I could tell she knew exactly what a promesa was. She had probably made one herself. She told us to wait a minute, and then she returned with a check for $25. As she filled out the sponsor form, she said, "Mrs. Martinez's car broke down last week. When you get to her house, tell her to call if she needs a ride to the grocery store. I'm going in a couple of hours." Patty nodded, and when we got back to the street, she said, "See what I mean? Everybody knows what's going on with everybody else. No privacy at all." How awful, I thought. After all, I hated my friends talking about me even when they were just reporting what happened over the weekend. Ileana wasted no time telling the Robins about my mom's cancer, or about my first attempt to get sponsors, and Gumwa told our whole class about Sonic. Never mind Shante, who blabbed about every dream with me in the starring role. As we walked, Patty found some bottle caps at the curb and crushed aluminum cans. When I pointed at a burned-out match, she shook her head. "Are you being selective about the trash you collect?" I asked. "Yup." Who knew what that girl was up to? We soon reached Mrs. Martinez's house and mentioned the grocery store. "Gracias, gracias," she said, all grateful. For a minute I thought we were giving her a ride. When Mrs. Martinez saw that her friend had already given money, she matched the donation. When we got to Johnny's house, Patty said, "Your yard looks great. My grandpa said you could borrow his mower whenever you want." When we got to Sally's house, she said, "So are you looking forward to your trip next week? My grandpa said not to worry about the dog. It's no trouble for him to come and fill his bowl." And when we got to Jamal's, she said, my grandpa's in no hurry to get back his $10, but if you have it on you, he said you could give it to my friend. She's raising money for cancer research. As we walked away, she said, I'm really getting the hang of this. She sounded excited. I didn't like the way she blabbed my whole story to everyone, but how could I complain when her blunt attitude resulted in sponsors, and when Patty was having fun? It seemed as if everyone donated, and like Mrs. Cavazos, they gave us messages, too. We must have passed along 20. Call us the Pony Express, Patty joked. Or the Pony-less Express, I said. She giggled at that. Pony-less, but not penniless, she added, glancing at my manila envelope. Seeing Patty in a good mood was putting me in a good mood, too. Even my mood ring sensed it and turned to a sapphire blue. One message led to another. A guy named Luke, and he had extra tomatoes from his garden. Mrs. Johnson said she would donate them to the soup kitchen. Hector said he could drop them off when he picked up his daughter, who volunteered there and who agreed to babysit for a lady named Lindsay, who in turn said she had coupons for free car washes at the gas station and was giving them away on a first-come, first-served basis. Isn't it crazy, Patty said, about all the messages? My grandpa doesn't mind, but it drives me nuts. Maybe, I said, but look at us. We found some cool trash, and I got 25 new sponsors. This has to be my most productive day yet. 3 side effects. After spending time with Patty, I made my way home. I felt exhausted but excited too. Finally, I was having success with my promesa. As I turned into my street, I heard the familiar roar of a lawnmower. Mr. Landon, our neighbor, was working on his yard. I could tell he had just started because most of the grass was still long. When I got to my front yard, I waved at him, and then Dad stepped out. Hi, Dad, I said, eager to show him the names I had collected. In a minute, he answered. He seemed angry, and I wondered if Jimmy was acting up. Maybe I should have stayed home. With Mom ill, Jimmy was hard to control, and Carmen liked to pick on him, making things worse. But Dad wasn't angry at the family. He was angry with Mr. Landon because he went straight to him and said, Can you mow another time? My wife can't rest without that noise. Mr. Landon shrugged. Sorry, gotta do it now. But she needs her sleep, Dad said. If it's too loud, tell her to wear earplugs. Why'd she turn in so early anyhow? It's only 4 o'clock. Who goes to bed at 4 o'clock? Do you want to know who goes to bed at 4 o'clock? Dad said, his voice getting loud. You really want to know? People who are sick, you hear. People who have cancer. I could tell Mr. Landon felt bad because he got apologetic. I'm sorry to hear that Lisa's sick. Really, I am. She's always been a kind lady. Dad stood there a minute, took a deep breath. Thanks, he said calmer. Thanks for understanding and for agreeing to do your yard another day. Now wait a minute, Mr. Landon quickly said. I said I'm sorry and I meant it, but I have to mow today. I work all week and it's the only time I have. I'll do it quick though, I promise. For a minute, Dad looked like someone who had just lost a championship game. Then he looked like someone who felt cheated by the referee. How's this for a promise, he said. Next time you need something, don't bother to ask because I promise not to help. Oh, come on now, don't be that way, Mr. Landon said. Don't be making a mountain out of a molehill. Dad ignored him and stomped toward the house. He didn't even remember that I was standing right there. Somehow the anger had blinded him. But Mr. Landon saw me and said, Tell your folks I'll just be an hour, if that. Sorry about the noise, but I have to do my yard. I hope you understand. It's okay, I said, feeling embarrassed, because Dad wanted quiet rules for the whole neighborhood now. I went inside and found Jimmy on the floor with his toy cars, while Mom lay on her recliner all bundled up. Her lips looked chapped and her skin paler than usual because she hadn't been enjoying the sun. She was watching TV, but her eyes were nearly closed. When her head fell forward, she jolted, surprised. I could tell she was fighting to stay awake a while longer. I got some more names for the cancer race. I held up the clipboard in my manila envelope. That's wonderful, Mom said. I sat on the couch, got comfortable. Are you doing okay? What was I thinking? I was just asking the dumbest question in the world. Of course Mom wasn't doing okay. She was sick. She answered anyway. I'm fine. Dad must have heard because he stepped in. I could tell he was still mad. You are not fine. Maybe not, Mom said, but why worry if I don't have to? What do you mean? I asked, sensing that something had happened. Mom sighed. Last night, she said, my arm started to feel funny. It didn't hurt, but it felt tight, like something was pushing against my skin, and when I woke up this morning, it looked like this." She pulled down the blanket and showed me. Fat arm, Jimmy laughed as he pointed at Mom. Her right arm was totally bloated. I could see her skin stretched tight like a spandex gym suit. She had no wrist, so her arm looked like a preschool drawing, a puffy rectangle with 5 sticks for the fingers. Fat arm, Jimmy laughed. "One more time," Dad said through clenched teeth, "and I'll spank you." He gave Jimmy the harshest stare down, and Jimmy's eyes started to water. I couldn't blame him for wanting to cry. Dad never got this angry. "What's the matter with you?" Mom said to him. "Jimmy's just making an observation. He's making fun of you." "But he's only 2, Mom said. He doesn't know what he's saying." Jimmy started to sob, so I picked him up and he wrapped his arms around me, putting all his strength into a hug. "You're upsetting him," I scolded. Now I was angry, and I sounded like a parent instead of the kid. "We're sorry, mijo," Mom said to Jimmy. He hid his face in my shoulder, but little by little he calmed down. "Besides," Mom added, "I do have a fat arm." She lifted it and studied it as if it were a separate part of her body. "It looks like an elephant leg, and it's got these hard cable things under the skin. Come touch it." "Lisa," Dad warned. "It's my arm," she snapped back. "I can't hide it or pretend it's normal. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think the way the body reacts is fascinating, too." Dad stared at her. Then he stared at her arm. He looked afraid. "Don't fight," I pleaded. "We're not fighting," Mom assured me. "Sometimes your dad takes things too seriously. And sometimes your mother doesn't take things seriously enough," Dad answered. "Like the neighbor. If he weren't mowing the lawn, you'd be able to rest, and your arm would feel better, I'm sure of it." "He has every right to mow his lawn," Mom said. "I told you to leave him alone, but you talked to him anyway. Now you're all short-tempered." Dad shook his head, too tired to argue. After a few seconds, he stepped out. When he left, Mom seemed sad. I could tell she wanted to fight the sadness, just like she had tried to fight sleep a minute ago. "Don't worry," she said. "These are tough times, and we're all a little anxious." That part was definitely true. Lately, my mood ring's favorite color had been black, for 100% stressed out. "Come touch my arm," Mom suggested again. Jimmy and I poked it. There were hard cables under the skin, but the areas were squishy. "Does this mean the cancer spread to your arm?" I asked, trying not to sound afraid, but unable to keep my voice from trembling. "No," Carmen said, walking in with the laptop. She must have been in the other room doing research. She set the computer on the coffee table and studied the screen. "This is a side effect from the treatment. It's called lymphedema. It happened because Mom's lymph nodes were damaged, and one of the things they do is to drain tissue fluid. It's like she has a clog in her armpit, so the fluid is all backed up." "That's what it feels like," Mom said. "It's very uncomfortable. I already called the doctor, and he wants to see me tomorrow. He said I'll have to go to physical therapy again. They're going to massage you and put wraps on you," Carmen said. "Look," she showed us pictures of swollen arms and legs being wrapped. Most of them were a lot bigger than Mom's. "That's how they get the fluid to move along, but it'll take several days for the swelling to go down. If you don't do anything, your arm will just get fatter and fatter." "I sure hope this is the last side effect," Mom said. "I'm already dealing with nausea and fatigue. This arm isn't so bad as long as something else doesn't happen. I want to do things again. I feel like I can't do anything anymore." So why was she having these side effects? It made no sense, especially after I'd been working so hard on my PROMESA. Was it because I wasn't working fast enough? What else could I do? I had gone to a lot of doors, many of them twice. I had asked all my friends and called my aunts and uncles. Why did I promise 500 names when I didn't know 500 people? "Since I can't lift my arm," Mom continued, "I won't be able to go to radiation treatment for a while." "Does that mean the cancer's going to spread?" I sounded more panicky than before. "I don't think so," Mom said, though I could tell she wasn't exactly sure. Carmen scrolled down the website and started to read. "It says that lymphedema can happen after surgery and that it occurs on the same side of the mastectomy. That's exactly what's happening to you." Mom nodded. "You'll have to wear compression bandages to assist with lymphatic flow." How cool is that? She was getting more and more excited, while I was getting more and more butterflies in my stomach. "Can I go to therapy with you?" Carmen asked. "Maybe they'll let me help. Maybe they'll teach me how to bandage the arm. That way I can take care of you at home." Mom nodded. "You should be a doctor," she told Carmen, and my sister smiled as if she had just received the biggest compliment. That's when I stopped listening to all her medical facts. After all, no one ever told me I could be a doctor. But why would they? You had to be smart for something like that, and I couldn't even come up with a promesa that was good enough to help Mom.